Our next speaker is an associate professor of medicine at the School of Medicine at Oregon Health and Sciences University. There, she serves on the faculty of the Knight Cancer Institute. Notably, she also holds a leadership position at the VA Portland Healthcare System, where since 2018 she has served as the Chief of Hematology and Oncology in Portland. She also serves as the national leader of our Director of Prostate Cancer Analysis for Therapy Choice Study, also called PATCH. When the Prostate Cancer Foundation partnered with the Department of Veterans Affairs in 2016, our goal was to deliver best-in-class, cutting-edge care and research in collaboration with our physician scientist community to our nation's heroes. Our next speaker truly embodies that dedicated commitment to our nation's veterans and their families. Please allow me to introduce Dr. Julie Graff.
Thank you for joining me for this talk today. I will be speaking about efforts between the VA and PCF to ensure that veterans with prostate cancer in the United States get the best possible care. Before I launch into the specifics, I want to give a special shout out to Rebecca Levine, who introduced this talk and who has been such a major part of this effort. Also, Jonathan Simons, Howard Sewell, and Michael Milken from PCF, who cheerlead and fundraise and lower the barriers for all of us. Within the VA system, there's Rachel Ramoni, Ken Myrie, Michael Kelly, Molly Clote, who are at the very top echelon of the VA and ensuring that any barriers get broken down. Additionally, Bruce Montgomery from Puget VA and Matt Rettig from West LA VA, who are the leads of the PopCap program that I'll be talking about. All the investigators, all the patients, all the generous funders, and partners of the VA and PCF. Thank you. Here are my disclosures. So you may or may not have heard much about this partnership, but it began in 2016. And essentially what you're looking at is a map of the United States and centers of excellence within the United States. These are VA hospitals that are either funded or unfunded, but they have a very specific mission of getting prostate cancer patients with metastatic disease sequenced, making sure that based on molecular mutations that patients are on the proper treatment for their cancer, opening up clinical trials that are often based in precision oncology, and also ensuring that veterans and investigators within the VA are excited to undertake VA care and are teaching others prostate cancer treatments. So PopCap is the precision oncology program for cancer of prostate, and it has three major parts. The first is sequencing, as I mentioned before. So every patient with metastatic prostate cancer in the PopCap system is expected to undergo sequencing. Generally, that's of their tumor, so somatic sequencing, but it could also be germline sequencing, and I will get into that more in a little bit. We are going to use the data that we collect from sequencing to get patients the FDA-approved therapies that are appropriate for their prostate cancer, as well as build upon what we know in prostate cancer by putting patients in clinical trials that are specific to the mutations that were within their tumor. This is called PATCH, and there's a slide coming up on that in a little bit. And finally, we want to make sure that the efforts we're putting in are improving the lives of our veterans and providing opportunities for people interested in prostate cancer research to fulfill their careers. So the first step, and many of us on this call are prostate cancer providers, the first step is to really do the sequencing. And this is challenging for many reasons. First, those of us who know that the tissue should be sequenced have a difficult time sometimes because of the amount of pressure we have on us to, clinically and otherwise. It takes time and effort to get a patient's tumor biopsied and to get that tissue to the pathologist, and then from there to get genetic sequencing. So, and furthermore, when you looked at that map of where the centers of excellence are, you noticed there was a lot of blue space that was not next to a center of excellence. For example, in South Dakota, there's no center of excellence. So, how do we make sure that the veterans are getting the sequencing that they need? And so I'm going to introduce you to the concept of NACHO, the next generation sequencing ascertainment for choosing oncology treatment, which is being led by Matt Rettig and Isla Garraway from Los Angeles. Now, I'm convinced that Matt comes up with all of his best acronyms while he's hungry, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So, NACHO falls under a large biorepository effort within the VA. And you can see where it's located, and that this effort seeks to also collect tissues from clinical trials, patient data, and to help publish findings and make best practices known. Here is the general workflow of NACHO. So, using the centralized resources we have through the VA, we can generate a list of veterans with metastatic prostate cancer. And we can draw from that list to determine, who's been sequenced and who hasn't. NACHO will have someone dedicated to looking through patient charts to see if that patient is appropriate for genetic sequencing, and also has the capability, the person doing this role will have the capability to order sequencing, even if the veteran is in a VA other than the Los Angeles VA. So one of the many nice things about the VA system is that we VA providers are licensed in one state to practice medicine, but because the VA is a federal institution, we're actually able to provide care to veterans throughout the country. And one of the challenges within the VA system is, how do you order tests at other VAs than your own? That part's not quite as simple. But those at the VA have found a way for one person to order tests from any VA in the country. So this person who's looking through the patient records can actually order that tissue blocks be sent to Los Angeles, can examine them, and can send a piece of tissue that's adequate for genetic sequencing. And what comes out of that effort is a report from a CLIA-certified lab, in this case, Foundation One Medicine, that contains the findings, including pertinent positives and negatives, for example, BRCA1 and 2, but also talks about genetic mutations that are found and may not presently have a treatment option that's geared toward that finding. So after this report is generated, it's distributed back to the physician caring for that veteran, along with recommendations of where to go next. And that may include standard of care treatments that are FDA approved, like PARP inhibitors, or it may include a clinical trial in our patch network, which I will get into. Next is an effort from Bruce Montgomery out of Puget Sound to do germline sequencing on veterans throughout the country. Germline sequencing, for me at least, is a challenging task. Within my own VA, if I meet someone with a strong family history of germline sequencing, I enter a consult for the patient to be seen by genetic counseling at OHSU. It can take a few months before the veteran is seen over there. The tests are ordered and the tests are interpreted. It's not ideal. And knowing that about 12% of veterans with metastatic prostate cancer or high-risk localized disease will actually have a mutation that's significant, we're actually looking in this situation at first finding the patients with the mutation and then doing post-testing genetic counseling. So we've gone from having to counsel 100% of patients down to 12% of patients, which is much more manageable. And Bruce is leading this effort in conjunction with other VAs and national services. It's a responsible way to do the genetic testing, and it includes follow-up for patients who don't end up sending the saliva kit back to the vendor, and ensuring that the veteran and his provider get the results. Another effort headed by Bruce is the Virtual Clinical Trials Network. So we are often given a list generated by our patients from clinicaltrials.gov, maybe not always at the VA, but at the universities, where they have identified clinical trials that they are interested in, but they're not necessarily open at our site. And some patients outside the VA have the means to go to Hopkins or wherever the trials open. But within the VA system, our patients often don't have the money to do such traveling. And so we are interested in bringing the trial to the patient. We can do that because we have a centralized IRB, and we can identify a patient, say in South Dakota again, and screen that patient and after consent, and even make an attempt to open that study quickly at the patient's local VA, or provide ways to travel to participate in the study. Some studies may be low risk and it may not be necessary to see the patient. It might be okay to just do phone visits, for example. This is one rendition of how it could look. So one of Bruce's studies is BRACED, and he's envisioning it here at a national leadership level, broken down into more local leadership to make sure that the patient is able to participate in this exciting study that I will describe momentarily. Here is my project, PATCH, which is the Prostate Cancer Analysis for Therapy Choice. As you can see, since we're sequencing all these patients, we are creating quite a database of veterans with metastatic prostate cancer and their known mutations. And we can look at a patient who's sitting in front of us, or a patient within the database nationally, to see what clinical trials are available. So for example, if it's a patient I'm treating and he has a PTEN deletion, perhaps he can go on to a proposed study looking at AKT inhibition and PD-L1 inhibition. Or if I am working with an industry partner and that partner asks, let's say that partner is doing a trial in a very rare mutation, we could say how many veterans have that mutation and do outreach to let them know about the clinical trial. So the one thing that we really need from this audience here is ideas. In a lot of areas in research, the field is very crowded. But in this PopCap project and Patch, there's room for great ideas and great people. And I would like to encourage everyone here to think about potential clinical trial concepts. And here's an email where you can reach me. CHOMP, another reason, see, Matt Rettig comes up with his acronyms while he's hungry, CHOMP. So this is a trial of immunotherapy in patients with mismatch repair deficiency or CDK12 inactivation, where they will be treated with pembrolizumab. So two relatively rare mutations, but within the VA system, we are actively recruiting. Additionally, and I apologize, I mentioned BRACED earlier, but the new trial is actually called COBRA. So this is a trial of patients with homologous recombination deficiency within their tumors, and randomizing them to receive PARP inhibitors, which were recently approved in this setting, or platinum-based chemotherapy. So it's an example actually of a trial that may not be funded by industry, may not be funded by other governmental funding agencies, but it's here in Patch, answering a very important clinical question about the activity of platinum chemo versus PARP inhibition in HRD tumors. And we are partnering up with Janssen to open their Amplitude study, which is looking at newly diagnosed metastatic prostate cancer harboring HRD mutations, and randomizing patients to hormone suppression therapy with abiraterone and prednisone and niraparib versus placebo. So this is another example where the germline sequencing in particular could be quite helpful. We could identify patients fairly early who have one of these types of mutations. As I mentioned earlier, these efforts would not work without dedication through VA leaders as well as partnership with the PCF. And I'd like to point out that for years now, PCF has been funding investigators using Valor Awards, which are for VA-based medicine. And here are some of the young investigators over the past 4 years. Additionally, we are very, very interested in recruiting and retaining, investigators from every race, background, and we take it very seriously. We are coming up with a charter to make sure that we're following all the rules and making sure that this is equitable. So I would encourage you to get involved if you're interested. Thank you.